Welcome back to another LP Gallery tutorial. This is going to be a continuation of creating our abstract patterns. If you recall that video, we showed you how to take basic colored shapes, gradient, textured, and pictures, and to turn those into beautiful abstract patterns that you can put into your text and other shapes. Now, I left the pattern fills out of that because they're actually quite unique. So this video is going to cover the pattern fills. And what we want to do is take PowerPoint's very boring pattern fills and turn them into something far more exciting like this. So here's your typical PowerPoint boring pattern fill. And here's just one of hundreds of examples that you can turn this into. So here's a pattern fill. And of course, we want to make them seamless, just like PowerPoint, so that when you put them into shape and you stretch the shape, they should be seamless. No point in having a pattern fill if it's not seamless. And then we're going to show you how to mirror them. Now, you've probably used the mirror feature, but maybe didn't quite follow what it did. So we're going to show you how the mirror feature works. And depending on the pattern, particularly if you get patterns that have diagonal lines, you can get some really good geometric patterns like this. So repeated geometric patterns, really nice ones. And the last thing we do is create what I call a stretch pattern. So we're going to have our tile stretch to fit the text, not tile the text. I'm not a big fan of tiling the image into the text because sometimes, like you see here, the pattern gets busy. It makes it really hard to read the text. So we're going to create what I call stretch patterns. That means they're going to stretch to fit the text. They're not going to be tiled to fit the text. And so we're going to take our patterns and we're going to add more artistic effects to give us a nice abstract design that we can stretch the text just like this. A beautiful abstract pattern. So that is our goal. So we're going to create a seamless tile. We'll create a nice pattern tiles, a stretch pattern for our text. So here we have 5 of PowerPoint's 48 pattern fills. Now I've just tried to take 5 of the more interesting ones here. Now I've left the default colors of white and blue. Now remember, color does alter the patterns. So I've left the default. So we're going to see what happens to just the default of these. I'm going to copy these and paste them as a picture. Now remember, artistic effects will not work on vectors. They have to be turned into a picture. Now, if you watched our video on abstract patterns, you know that we have to do that. We have to turn everything into a picture. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to select all this. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it. And there's your smart tag. I'm going to paste it as a picture. The picture always go to the center. I'm going to drag it here. Now, obviously, you've got to get better granular control if you're to do these all individually. But to save time, we're going to do them one shot. You'll still get the idea. Because of their pattern, they're all going to be affected differently. So our main artistic effect we're going to be using is glow edges. So we go here to effects. We're going to go artistic effects. We're going to go here and go to glow edges. And we get that. Under our options, we have transparency at 15. I don't want any transparency, so I'm going to take it down to 0. And then I'm going to take the smoothest down to 0. So again, we're going to go 0, 1, 2. So I think we'll only be able to go up to 6 on this one. Okay, so I'm going to take this down to 0, and that is 0. And now I'm going to copy this, and all I have to do is hold my control and drag, hold the control, that makes a perfect copy. So that's still got the glow edges on it, and you see it's set at 0. So now this one, I'm going to make 1. And you can see it's starting to change. Now I'm going to hold my control and drag that down. And on this one, I'm going to make 2. And you can see it really starting to change. I'm going to drag that one down. And I'm going to make that one 3. And I'm going to drag that one down. And I'm going to make that one 4. And I'm going to take that one down. And I'm going to make that one 5. And for the last one here, I'll make 6. Okay, so just look at what we have here. Look at the different patterns just by changing the smoothness. So each one of these produces a different pattern. You can clearly see that here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 4th one down, and I'm going to copy and paste it as a brand new image so that we can apply the glow edges on it right from the beginning again. So I'm going to take the 4th one down, 1, 2, 3, 4, copy, and paste it as a brand new image. Okay, let's put that here, and let's apply the glow edges to that one. So there's your glow edges, and take a look at this. You get an entirely different pattern than what you had over here. Okay, now notice it's gone more to the green in here. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to set the transparency to 0. And then I want to set the smoothest down to 1. Okay, so now we have the smoothness at 0 and the transparency at 0. So now I want to hold my control. I'm going to drag this. So this one is a duplicate of that, and it has its smoothness to 0. We're going to go to 1. Okay, now that's 1. Now I'm going to take this. I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to set this one to 2. That's 2. Take this. Set this one to 3. That's 3. Duplicate. Set this one to 4. And we're going to set that one to 5. We'll set this one to 6. And we have one more. And we'll set that one to 7. Okay, so if we take a look at this, take a look at your patterns. And you can see they're all quite different based on what you started with. Okay, now again, if I had taken the last one and copied and pasted and started this again, you'd get an entirely different set of patterns. Had I used different colors, you would have got a different set of patterns. So we can keep going like this. We can take another number 4 and copy paste the new image, and you'll get another set of patterns in that. So it's a continuous form of pattern making. So Glow Edges works extremely well with PowerPoint Pattern to create brand new patterns. So we're going to create our seamless tile. Now, when you have simple shapes like this that have strong horizontal and vertical, it's very easy to create a seamless tile. But when you have diagonals, it's a little trickier to create a seamless tile. So what I think I'm going to do is I'll take this one here that has strong diagonal lines, and I'll take this one, which is very simple, straight horizontal and vertical. So I'm going to take that one, and I'm going to take that one. And we'll paste those there. First thing I want to talk about is these black rectangles. Sometimes that's just the way it works out. With the glow edges, it just turns to black. Sometimes there's an actual pattern there, you just can't see it. So I'm going to just duplicate this one, and I'm going to show you that. So I'm going to go to Format, go to Corrections, I'm going to make it a little lighter, and there's a pattern there. So you can go to your panel here and lighten it up more. I mean, you can only do so much in the menu, and then you have to go to the panel to do all your fine tuning. So I can clearly see there's a pattern here. These appear not to have patterns. So again, when you look at the dark rectangles, there still may be a pattern there. So you might want to lighten it up to see what's there. Okay, so let's get working on these. So we're going to do this one first. This has got the strong horizontal and vertical. Very easy to create a seamless pattern using strong horizontal and vertical lines. So the first thing I got to do is I have to crop it because I just want that one. Of course, if you're doing this as individual pieces, you wouldn't be cropping like I'm cropping here. Now, what we should do with this one is copy and paste it as a new image. So I'm going to copy that and paste it as a new image. And here's why. I'm going to still have to crop this. So if I right click and crop, I'm going to have to deal with all this, and that kind of gets into the way. So if I copy and paste as a new image, I'm not going to have that problem. Now the next thing to do, of course, is to stretch this a little bigger to see what you're doing. So I'm going to stretch it bigger. The first thing you need to do with all of these, it doesn't matter which one, is you need to crop the edges. The edges are always kind of blemished, and they're not very good. So they all have to be cropped out. So I'm going to right click, use my crop. It doesn't really matter how much you come into the image, just crop the edges out because they're never going to be perfect and you're never going to make a seamless tile with those edges in there. Let's take a look at this. We have a clear horizontal and vertical pattern. So what that means is we decide where we want to crop. For example, I could crop right here. There's these lines with these little bumps on them. So I could crop to that bump, crop to that bump, and that makes a seamless tile. Now I could crop to the edges here. I could go right here, crop half of this out, and then crop half of this out. And again, we get a seamless pattern. So you have to look and see where do you want to crop. In this case, I'm going to choose right here. I'm going to crop the line right there. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to just take my crop tool, just crop right there, a little bump right there. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And now what I'm going to do is the same thing at the bottom, right to that little bump there, and same thing to the top. And there you go. And that's a seamless tile. Then we make it smaller. Okay, so now I'm going to copy this. I'm going to click on this rectangle, go to my fill, go to my picture and texture, and go to the clipboard, and puts it in there. What PowerPoint does is a stretch. So by default, it stretches. And that's what we want to do with the text. We want to create our abstract patterns that will stretch in the text. But in our shapes, we want to make a seamless tile. So we click here, Tile, Picture, Texture, and what do you get? You get a seamless tile. All you have to do when you have strong horizontal and verticals is just look where the pattern is and usually crop to half into the pattern. You crop to the same point on all four edges and you'll get a seamless tile. So you can see that's perfect. Now it is seamless. If I stretch it out, it's perfectly seamless. Okay, now the next thing I want you to notice is this. By default, PowerPoint always starts at the top left. That means this pattern starts at the top left and it goes this way until it gets to the edge and then goes down. So it's always starting from the top left, and that's important to know. Now you can, of course, have this start in the center, the bottom right, whatever. But now we know that PowerPoint by default starts at the top left. Now this is going to be important when we do our diagonal lines. So let's do our diagonal lines. So I'm going to, again, right click. I'm going to crop. And again, I'm going to copy, paste this picture. Another advantage of pasting this picture is that if you mess it up, you got the original to go back to. Okay, so I'm going to take this one, make it bigger. Once again, first thing I'm going to do is crop out the edges. They're all useless. And again, I just have to go in. Doesn't really matter how much I go in. Now I'm going to make that smaller. Now just to show you that this is not a seamless tile, I'm going to copy that. Click on my rectangle, go to my fill, go to the clipboard. Okay, and I'm going to have it tile. So I'm going to click tile, and you can see it's definitely not a seamless pattern. None of these patterns that you create with the artistic effects are going to be seamless patterns. They're all going to have to be cropped into the seamless pattern. Now I showed you one way to do it with this way. If they've got perfect horizontal vertical lines, that's easy. Diagonal lines aren't quite as easy. So we don't want to sit there and try to figure out how much do I have to crop. We're going to do it a lot easier than this. And you can do this next technique to anything you want, even to this one if you wanted to. So here's what you do. So we've got this pattern, and we're going to duplicate it like this. We're going to have them touch each other like this. Now I'm going to take this one here. I'm going to use my right arrow key, and I'm going to nudge it into the first one until they line up. You might have to go quite a bit in. So we just keep nudging it until they line up perfectly. You can see we're lining up, and that looks pretty good. Now all I have to do is take this one that I moved, right click, and I crop. Okay, now I'm going to crop back, and I'm looking for the edge of the first one. There's the edge of the first one, and I'm taking this, and I'm going to line it up right to the edge. Okay, not like this, where there's space. It has to be lined up right to the edge. Okay, so again, you got to line up as close as you can, right to the edge. Now, the reason this works is because this is going to be the top left. Okay, so it's going to be the top left, and because you cropped it, when the tiles over here is going to be perfectly aligned. So again, we're starting from the top left, and that's why we're cropping from the left. Okay, now that part is done. We get rid of the first one. Okay, now we have to work on the bottom. Now remember, it goes all the way to the left and then tiles down. So we take this one and we duplicate it, line it up perfectly, and then we're going to move that up and do the same thing. So we just keep going until they line up perfect. That looks pretty good to me. And once again, right click, crop. We take this one, we drag it down, find the edge of the first one, the top one there, and go right to the edge. Okay, so you don't want a gap like that because it clearly is not going to line up if you do that. So you have to make sure that when you're cropping, you're touching the top one. It has to touch like this. Okay, no gap. Okay, now we take that one and we'll just move it here. We'll make that one smaller. Whatever size you want. They don't have to be the same size. You can make them bigger, smaller, whatever you like. Now we're going to copy that one. We're going to click in here, go to our fill, clipboard, tile, and now you got a perfect pattern. So there it is with the diagonals. So the diagonals are a little bit trickier. So basically just do it the way I showed you. And again, it works perfectly because by default, PowerPoint is tiling from the top left. So everything's to the left and then down like that because it goes to left, 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 then it goes down. So if you do what I showed you, you get perfect tile patterns. Okay, now for the text, of course, well, we can take that. We can apply it into the text. We have to go to the text options. So we go to picture texture and get the same thing. We're going to tile it and we get the same pattern. So that's not too bad of a pattern to fit into text. It's still readable. Let's take this one. We're going to copy that one and we'll put that in there. Go back to text options, go here, clipboard, and we'll tile it. Well, that one you can see is a little more busier. That one's a little harder to read the text. So this is where you got to be careful. So a pattern like that into text, well, that's pretty hard to read the text. But you could also make the pattern smaller. I mean, it doesn't matter how you originally created the pattern. I mean, I could just go ahead and make this pattern a lot smaller. Copy that. Click in here. Go back to my text. Go back here. Clipboard. Tile it. Now the pattern's smaller. Well, it looks a little bit better. Okay, don't assume that you got to keep your patterns the same size. You don't have to. You're the boss. You make them any size you want. So what happens if I make it really big like that? Don't want to make it too big or it gets soft and fuzzy, but let's try that one. And we tile it, and again, too busy. So you get to play with your patterns. You can make them bigger or smaller. You can change the color. You don't have to be this color. You can go to your options, for example, change the color. Let's go back to this one. Let's make this one smaller again. Let's go to my format. Let's see, go to color. Make it a little bit, it's got a little bit of yellow to it now. Let's go back to my format. Maybe I'll go to my corrections here. And let's see. I can make it more blue, make it more yellow. Maybe I'll make it more yellow like that. Copy that. Click in here. Go back to my text. And put that in there. And there. That's not too bad. Again, to me, that's too busy of a pattern. It makes it really hard to read the text. But we can continue by adding more artistic effects to this. And I think I'll just quickly show you that. We're actually going to focus on that, on something else. Let's say I go to this one here. Okay, that one's a nice artistic effect. So paintbrush, the watercolor sponge, and the paint strokes are really good to modify these patterns. So here you can see I've got paintbrush. It gives it more of a diamond shape. That looks pretty good. I'm going to copy that. Click in here. And we'll tile that. And you get a slightly different pattern. It's kind of nice. So again, we can modify the patterns with other artistic effects. Okay, so that's a seamless pattern. And if you follow my rules about cropping them, you will get perfect seamless patterns. It doesn't matter whether diagonal, straight, or whatever. It'll be perfectly seamless pattern.